All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. You have now arrived at my train of thought. It is time for the Power Rankings. And I'm going to finish the Thanksgiving theme with the pies. It's usually how we all finish our Thanksgiving meals, with our favorite pie of choice. Let's not waste any more time. People are getting hungry. It's time for the pecan pie zombie tier. Pecan pie is a pie that will not agree with me. We're not doing it. Let's get to the teams in question. Jacksonville, Gators versus Seminoles. True, Florida barely got to a bowl game. And also true, the Seminoles have 2 wins. But I'm very sure that the Seminoles season would be kinda sorta made if they were to beat the Gators and humiliate them and kind of go out on a high note on what's been a disastrous 2024 calendar year. From not making the playoffs and getting obliterated by Georgia, to losing to Georgia Tech, where everyone was able to laugh at them, and having a season that we're all going to remember for being straight up utter humiliation for the Florida State Seminoles. And for the Gators, all right, you got a signature win and then another signature win. Good. And the season's strong. You have your quarterback for next year in Lagway. You've got something perhaps brewing. Oh, and the Jaguars are terrible, but we already knew this. Las Vegas, Black Friday Miracle? Last year, we saw them have a Christmas miracle. They were the final team to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2023-2024 season. They did it with back-to-back touchdowns on the defensive side of the ball and somehow made it work and made it stick for the entire second half. It was wild to see. They will return to the scene of the crime, if you will, and they will play the Chiefs at Arrowhead on Friday. Now, no one expects the same type of outcome, but then again, no one suspected that the Chiefs were going to lose to the Raiders last year. So maybe anything is possible. The Raiders are still bad, though, and Aiden O'Connell is going to be the quarterback. That's not great. New York Giants, no mulligan. No, you don't get a do-over for the mess that you have made. You don't get a do-over for drafting Daniel Jones in the first place. You don't get a do-over for impulsively doing it instead of waiting a year for a much better QB class. You don't get a mulligan for the Saquon Barkley deal that you completely botched. You don't get a mulligan for the Daniel Jones fiasco, the entire career that you completely botched. He never should have been drafted that high. He never should have been put in that position. And now it's going to be a major albatross on your salary cap situation for the next year or so. The Giants losing to Tampa Bay is expected. It was par for the course. And Tommy DeVito was probably the last reason standing for watching the Giants, and for the Giants to be somewhat relevant. He's not there possibly for the Thanksgiving Day game with the Cowboys, which I'll talk about in a little bit. New York Jets. Rodgers to IR. So that's the rumor, right? Aaron Rodgers could potentially be shut down, and then with that would be his final snaps as a New York Jet. He can go off somewhere else and not come back for the 25 season. And potentially another Jordan, this time Travis instead of Love, could replace him in the future. Tyrod Taylor in the present, but as we know, the football gods seem to not like Tyrod Taylor, or maybe Taylor did something in a past life where he may be the most cursed guy in the NFL, not named J.K. Dobbins. Anyway, the Jets season, as we know, is effectively over, and they need to draft a quarterback in the first round, maybe second round at the latest, to try to rebuild and blow this up. And then they got some hard decisions to make when it comes to their 3 prized 2022 picks, who have all played well in their respective careers. So Jermaine Johnson, who is another and maybe even the forgotten 2022 rookie first round pick at that time, he's coming off the injury, but he was looking like he was going to be a really good pass rusher. So they've got 4 major decisions to eventually make, and 3 of them can get the 5th-year options. Breece Hall's the only one that cannot. What will the Jets do? And those are guys I think worth building around, but what will the Jets actually do? Time will tell. New England. Mayo saw Ihod. I have mentioned Ihod as the International House of Doom. This is Hard Rock Stadium for the Patriots. They don't win in Miami. They generally don't do it. They didn't really do it that well with Brady. They have definitely not done it since Brady. And this was Drake May's first time seeing Hard Rock Stadium as a New England Patriot as opposed to a North Carolina Tar Heel, and it was not good. It was a disaster pretty much from the rip. And the moment that the Patriots missed that kick off a doink, the game really flipped and it really turned on its head. Miami effectively never looked back, and the game was not as close as the 34-15 final would indicate, to be honest. Don't worry, New England. You don't have much time left in this season to go get your high-end receiver that you absolutely need to help Drake May with. Carolina. Bryce is improving. It looks like it. It feels like it. He's played better the last few weeks. Maybe there is hope for Bryce Young yet. Maybe there is something to it with Dave Canales. Maybe they've figured out something. Also, Chuba Hubbard is looking like a really good signing. That was a great move by Carolina. He's probably their best offensive player by a lot as of this moment in time. The Panthers absolutely need number one receivers ASAP to help the cause for Bryce. I do like Jatavian Sanders. Hopefully he gets healthy. And Xavier Legette could be a very high-end 2 and maybe even a 1 eventually. But Carolina is a couple of years away, I would say, to really matter in the NFL. Please get you an edge rusher to replace Brian Burns, so that's going to be hard to do in the draft. But you're, I think, 2 years away from making some sort of noise in the NFC South. I do like where you're going, and this was a pretty good game against the Chiefs. Let's not get that confused. Even a loss can feel like a win in some degree, because I think a lot of us thought they were going to get mauled by Kansas City. Tennessee. One with meme. Somehow, Will Levis did something memeable. The pick six was not very good, and yet it didn't matter. They ended up winning anyway, and it didn't feel like a fluke. They simply just felt like the better team. Maybe Brian Callahan's on to something with Will Levis? I don't think so, but I'm not going to act like this wasn't a good step in the right direction for him. Good win for Tennessee. It's a lost season, sure, but at least you beat the Texans and you put a little bit of doubt into Houston's heads. Never a bad thing. And Chicago, Caleb's finest hour. To date, that's what this is. Yes, it's a loss. It looks bad. The overtime was a disaster. Some of the special teams were bad, from the block kick to the muffed punt. Also bad, sure. But Caleb Williams actually looked the part for once, and he did it against the real defense. That's good to see. He's going to have to do that some more down the stretch for the Bears to get any sort of wins, because this schedule is still unbearably tough. No pun intended. But it was a good sign to see Caleb Williams at least look somewhat productive in this game. That was good to see. And now let's get to the pumpkin pie monkey's paw team. Cleveland. Garrett, God mode. Myles Garrett was a monster, and he was incredibly dominant from the word go to the end, whether it was perfect conditions or snowy conditions. It did not matter. Myles Garrett was a problem. Jameis Winston was hilarious, and there's no other way to say it. He was absolutely hilarious. It was so much fun to see him do what he did with the interviews and his gameplay. I really, really hope when he retires, he ends up on TV somewhere, because Jameis Winston is absolutely hilarious. The man is funny. Anyway, I think the Browns will take this as their signature win and enjoy everything about it. They may get beat up and beaten down over the next couple of weeks, especially on Monday night against Denver, but at the very least, they got this signature win against the Steelers to follow up a signature win against the Ravens. Good work by Jameis Winston. Did he get the job going forward, at least as a stopgap, until Cleveland drafts their franchise guy? Only time will tell. New Orleans, SEC in shambles. Yeah, the Saints are annoying and frustrating to watch sometimes. So let's get to the SEC. Let's talk about it. You got Alabama, you got Ole Miss, you got Texas A&M. All three parties taking L's last week, and the SEC is in deep trouble for any of them to get into the college football playoff. Georgia, Texas, Tennessee all did their parts, all did fine. Probably all locks to get in at this moment in time, or very close to them. And at the very least, as long as they win on Saturday, they're good, or this weekend, they're good to go. The three teams that lost last week in the conference with good records, it's not great. The only one that's in control of their destiny is Texas A&M, and even they have a very hard challenge ahead of them. Speaking of Texas, the Cowboys, Dallas, Longhorns or Aggies? I understand Dallas beat an arch rival in the Commanders. I understand Cavante Turpin made an amazing spin move, and he's going to be the all-pro kick returner as he should be. But the other part to this weekend for people in Texas is the return of a great rivalry between Texas and Texas A&M. I love that this rivalry's back. I love that it's going to end seasons. This is a beautiful thing to see. And now there are actual high stakes involved here. Winner goes to the SEC championship game and effectively a road game against Georgia. Let's face it, the game's in Atlanta. The loser, if it's Texas, probably gets in the playoff, but we can't assume it based off of the college football playoff and based off of the Longhorns not having a statement win. If it's Texas A&M, they're definitely out. So Texas could absolutely ruin the Aggies senior day in College Station. A big-time monster game. I am so looking forward to it. Even with A&M coming off the L last week, I'm looking forward to it. Dallas playing on Thanksgiving is going to be nice. We'll see who performs at halftime. It's a big stage everyone's going to watch. And if Cooper Rush can beat the Giants and actually win a home game for the Cowboys for the first time this calendar year, I guess that's something to be proud about. San Francisco, 2020 remix confirmed. Yeah, it's like that. It's pretty bad. No Bosa, no Williams, no Purdy last week. It showed they basically crumbled like graham crackers against a team that they routinely bully. The Packers absolutely relished in the beating that they gave out to the Niners last week. And their season, I thought it would be done, but I didn't think that the rest of the NFC West would kind of fall back to the pack, if you will. And now all parties involved are within a game of each other. So the Niners season, ironically, isn't completely dead, which is saying something. But it's not looking good because their flow and their momentum and their vibe just isn't it. And their injury bug isn't helping. The Niners don't have much time to waste or make up all of this chaos and all this drama. They're going to have to be at their very best to close this season out and do it in style. Indianapolis, bad football weekend. What we wanted from the Hoosiers was that you keep up with Ohio State, you show that you belong with the top echelon of college football, and you don't look bad for points in time where you can get blown out of the building. They did not heed these pieces of advice, nor did they look good for the last, I would say, 25 minutes of this game. They were battered, they were bludgeoned, they were bruised up, they were beaten up, and now no one really takes them seriously. Let's face it. You can't face a bad schedule like this and then face one really, really good Buckeye team and get absolutely mauled and get absolutely destroyed at the first hint of trouble. Because the game was close, and then the Ibuka touchdown happens off the punt return, and then the game was effectively over. It could have been worse. Ohio State left 14 points on the board. But it's just a really, really bad, sour taste in everyone's mouth that wanted to believe that the Hoosiers were actually worthy of a high seed in the college football playoff. They may still make it because of the aforementioned SEC chaos. But it just doesn't look great after getting destroyed in Columbus. Also, the Colts got blown out by the Lions, but everyone can see that coming. Let's be honest about that. Houston, in right division. Okay, the Texans may become the most frustrating team in the NFL this year. And the reason is simple. They're very talented. Let's not get that confused. Their high-end skill guys can play when they're all rolling. Let's not get that confused. This offensive line is bad, but we knew that. And C.J. Stroud has taken I wouldn't say massive step back, but kind of a step back. You can sense he's not the C.J. Stroud that was dotting cats up at full blast last year. He can do that from time to time, but there are points in games where he just doesn't. And that's really concerning. Or at least it would be in most every division in the NFL if it weren't the AFC South, who really doesn't have too many teams that could possibly try to catch him. Indy, maybe, but the Texans already swept them. So what do you have here? I just don't see it for Houston to fall anywhere but the 4 seed when it comes to the AFC playoff picture. Cincinnati, now or never? Well, I could say this about the Bengals, and it's obvious Cincinnati almost has to win out to have any sort of shot to make the playoffs. I could also say this about the Buckeyes, who face their arch nemesis in Michigan coming up this Saturday in Columbus. This is the weakest Michigan team of this decade, where the Wolverines, well, really since 2020, but I barely count that. So this is the weakest full season Michigan team this decade. There you go, that's better. And Ohio State's 0-3 against Michigan this decade when it's been a full year. So in this case, I gotta know, you can beat the Wolverines when they're at their weakest, right? Because Michigan's gonna bring a lot of bread, and they've already spent 8 figures on their quarterback of the future starting next year, and you're gonna have to see him next year in Ann Arbor. I do want to know, Ryan Day and company, you can get your pound of flesh against your arch nemesis and get to Indianapolis, right? Because if you can't, then it's going to be Penn State, and people are not going to be happy in Columbus about this. Bengals, can you beat the Steelers and beat your arch nemesis so you can kind of sort of save your season? You almost don't have a choice but to. And Tampa Bay made first layup. Do I trust anyone in the NFC South? Not really. I want to believe in Tampa Bay because Baker Mayfield's been playing well, and Mike Evans is 1,000 yards a year, as we know. Bucky Irving's playing well. The defense, though, can be suspect, is at least okay. There's reasons to want to believe in them. There are. The most important to me might be the schedule. Let's face it, it's incredibly weak. And if they can get some help from teams playing the Falcons can take a couple L's, they can absolutely win the NFC South. They're going to need at least, I would say, 3 of them because Atlanta did sweep them this year. But Tampa Bay is not done. And I think the Bucs, as long as they take care of their business, probably do make the playoffs after all. Let's get to the sweet potato pie playoff tier. LA Rams, Saquon's latest victim. Yeah, that was bad. That was very, very bad what happened to the Rams' run defense. And Saquon Barkley said, I'm going to make my MVP case on your backs, and I'm going to style on you while I do it. That's effectively what happened on Sunday Night Football. The Rams' defense did not show up. The Rams' offense could not keep up. And LA had a golden opportunity to really take hold, to some degree, of an NFC West that's going to come down to the last weeks of the year, and just couldn't do it. Now, can the Rams make the playoffs? Sure they could, because this division is wild, and they may get a second team in if they do enough. They just missed an opportunity that they could have taken to move forward in the NFC West. Washington, Cliff Kingsbury special. Is it a coincidence that Jaden Daniels got hurt and the Commanders are starting to plummet? It is a coincidence that around halfway through almost every season, without fail, for Cliff Kingsbury, whether it's in college, whether it's his head coach, whether it's offensive coordinator, that the team in question that he is employed by, that cuts him checks, starts to tank it towards the second half of seasons. Again, it's happened pretty much everywhere without fail. Washington, I think, was in a lot of people's survival pool picks and somehow did not win. And not only didn't win, they were down 2 scores for a decent amount of this game. That's an ugly loss to take against a Cowboys team that was basically DOA, and you helped revive them. That's not great. Surely you're going to beat the Titans on Sunday, right? Because if you don't, I might have to run this 3 words or less article back on next week's Power Rankings. Arizona, Sun Devil dancing. I really was not expecting to think that the Arizona Sun Devils could make the college football playoff. Yet they're in control of their own fate after beating BYU. And they're in control of their own fate to get there regardless of everything else that happens in the Big 12. Just handle business against Arizona and you're good to go. I really don't want to talk about the Cardinals after the really, really bad loss they had last week in Seattle. But I will say this. I think they're going to be okay, although Kyler Murray, yikes, that was an ugly pick 6. They should be able to hold it down. They have home games in the division left with the Niners and the Seahawks. As long as Arizona doesn't crash the car, if you will, the Cardinals should be okay. Atlanta, Bulldogs or Falcons? Which is more meaningful for them right now? The fact that Georgia's effectively a win from the college football playoff, or the fact that as long as the Falcons take care of business, they're going to win the NFC South? Which is more meaningful? And which is more concerning, quite honestly, because Kirk Cousins is starting to falter a little bit, and that's really concerning. And though Atlanta's offensive line is really good, can they protect him? Can they keep him vertical? Can they keep him upright and make sure that he's going to be able to cook and make things happen going forward? We do need more Icy Kirk success. That would be good. As for Georgia, just win against whatever Texas team emerges out of College Station. You'll get to the playoff, and you're probably going to host a round one playoff game. That is at least my thought when it comes to their situation. Miami, Cam and Tua. Two very different quarterbacks. One that's a very good precision passer in the pocket. One that is incredibly dynamic. Two quarterbacks that will be drafted in top fives in their respective drafts. Tua already was. Cam Ward definitely should be and probably will go, I would say, the second or third pick in the draft next April. Two teams that one is a come running squad in the form of the Dolphins. One is okay, we're good, but they have to make sure that their defense doesn't let them down in the form of the Hurricanes. Which do I believe in more going forward? I'd probably say the Dolphins because I don't trust the Hurricanes' defense. I simply don't. It's not good. And for the Dolphins' case, December is here. Well, almost. Can Miami avoid the typical so-called December swoon that Dolphin teams have had over the years? Winning tomorrow night would be a very major key in this matter. Seattle, salvaging ceilings. Sure, in the form of the Huskies, you have 6 wins, you're going to a bowl game, great. Considering it's a complete rebuild year and you lost pretty much all of your starters and your coaching, I think most Husky fans would probably take it. And you're moving to a brand new conference and you've had some long road trips for that matter. I think most Husky fans would be like, all right, we can run with this and we can rebuild and try to make this happen. And ideally, in a perfect world for Husky fans, they go take care of business and beat their arch op in the Oregon Ducks. Now, I don't see it, and most people probably don't see it. But if they did, I think most Husky fans will take 7-5 and beating the Oregon Ducks over most seasons that don't end in natties. Anyway, getting back to salvaging seasons, the Seahawks. I think effectively salvaged theirs with beating Arizona, and now they have control of a very chaotic NFC West. Seattle can still take care of some business, and they don't have too many division games left. They have, as a matter of fact, only 2. One with the Rams and one with the Cardinals, both road games. They could probably stand to win both of them to give themselves a fair shot at winning this chaotic division, but it's going to take pretty much everything they've got. I love what I'm seeing from Jackson Smith-Njigba, though. He's been outstanding this year. I love what I'm seeing from him. Denver, Buffaloes and Broncos. One team might have blown their chance at making the college football playoff. This is going to be hard for the Colorado Buffaloes to make it after getting pretty much humiliated by Kansas. Kansas has been a giant killer in the Big 12, by the way. And the other, in the form of the Denver Broncos, who have got a golden opportunity to make the NFL playoffs. Just keep winning and stacking wins. You should be okay here. There are some tough games left, don't get it confused. But as long as Denver doesn't do things that are dumb, the Broncos could be the 7th seed. And that's incredible progress considering where they were with Russell Wilson and where they now are with Bo Nix and Sean Payton. That's incredible progress for the Broncos. Good work. Keep it going if you can. And the LA Chargers, 0-3 Jim. Yeah, Jim's 0-3 against his brother John, and this one's gonna hurt because this was avoidable. They had an early lead, they had control of this game, and then they could not stop Derrick Henry. Quentin Johnston lost his hands, and even though Baltimore tried to let them in this game and tried to keep them in this game, they just couldn't take advantage of the opportunities that they were given. That's gotta be frustrating. It's not quite chargering, but it's just frustrating. It's just a normal rough loss to take. The Chargers should be okay. In theory, they should make the playoffs as long as they don't full-on Charger this season. Jim, I'm sure, wants another shot at John, but 0-3 is not a great look to start when coaching against your brother. And now let's get to the apple pie title tier. Apple pie is the best pie, do not question it. Anyway, Pittsburgh, Vince Tomlin. Every year, without fail, we have seen the Steelers lose a game that's like, huh? How? It's just a matter of which one is it, and how are you going to predict it? In this case, it turned out to be the Browns, who, okay, with Jameis Winston, they're better than with Deshaun Watson. Sure, we understood that. But this was ugly. And this was another case of their offense not showing up. And this was Chris Boswell having to carry their offense. Not great when your kicker has to do all the work. And in this case, they just couldn't stand it. And Mike Tomlin, I think, did it to himself. Tomlin's mismanagement of a golden opportunity on a penalty decided to give Cleveland a new life. And Cleveland didn't miss. And with that, the Steelers just gave away an opportunity to make some hay and eventually keep up with the Ravens. Instead, they lose the game on the Ravens. Yes, they have the tiebreaker still, sure, because they beat them. But it's just a really ugly loss to take. And in the Steelers' case, and for their sake, I really hope it's their only Vince Tomlin loss this season. Green Bay, chop with axe. One Wisconsin-based team is going to face the Dolphins and have to deal with rookie Chop Robinson, who is coming in super hot lately. One Wisconsin team is going to have to fight for Paul Bunyan's axe, and what I would consider the most underrated rivalry in college football. I love Minnesota versus Wisconsin. It is a fun, entertaining rivalry in the Midwest, and they've had some crazy, crazy good moments. Neither college football team is great, let's keep it a buck, but I am looking forward to kind of leering into that game in between breaks of the Penn State game, because of course I'm watching Penn State handle business. And I just want to see what happens with Wisconsin and Minnesota. I'm looking forward to seeing it. As for the Packers, great win to beat your bully. Can you keep your momentum going? I will talk about your game in a little bit. I talked about Minnesota. Let's talk about the Vikings. New QB2. Daniel Jones signs earlier today for effectively a vet minimum. I think it said like $375,000, but he don't need the bread from the Vikings because the Giants will take care of him. Anyway, I think this will help solve the QB2 situation, and I'm okay with that. I think that's perfectly fine for the Vikings to have an insurance policy in the event that Sam Darnold goes haywire. It's kind of wild to think that a couple of years ago, these were the two guys meant to be the pillars of New York and be the starting quarterbacks of the future for the Giants and the Jets, and neither worked out in New York, and now they're both in Minnesota. Darnold's working out. Let's see if Daniel Jones ever gets the shot to. Baltimore, Henry versus Barkley. The two best running backs in football this year, both of them in new places, both of them effectively fighting for Offensive Player of the Year and or NFL MVP, because both I think would be worthy of both awards if either gets to 2,000. I think it's a real case that both of them could get to 2,000. It'll be hard to do so this week because both teams' run defenses are really good, but it's in play that either or both guys can win both awards and or get to 2 stacks in terms of yards. Can either get to Eric Dickerson's number at 2109? Maybe. I don't think it's impossible. Philadelphia, Hurts versus Jackson. You already know what the main event of this week is. I don't need to really... I'll get into that in a little bit. But Hurts versus Jackson. These are two guys who are also in play for the NFL MVP. Let's be honest here. These two guys, Josh Allen and the two running backs on the Eagles and Ravens, are all in play for the MVP. They're probably your 5 best candidates. Hurts and Lamar have done excellent work this year, and in the case of the Eagles, it's really been more Barkley. In the case of the Ravens, it's really more so probably Lamar. In the Eagles' case, losing Brandon Graham's going to hurt, because I would argue he's been their best pass rusher this year. And I would love to see if any of the younger guys can continue to get better in terms of getting home and getting to the quarterback. Zach Bonds played really well. So is Nakobe Dean. Can either be a much better force and or pick up the slack for the lack of Brandon Graham, because that will be very needed against Lamar Jackson. Kansas City, ugly home win. And yes, this game was in Charlotte. I understand. I get it. But did you see all the red in the stands at Bank of America Stadium? That felt like a home game. And Kansas City kind of catered to it. They, unfortunately for them, had to wait till the very end of the game to actually win it against a bad Panther team, but they got it done, and they're 10-1. And it's another 10-win season for the Chiefs. Good work. You're keeping up the 1 seed, and you almost have to win out because it's going to be hard for Buffalo to lose a game down the stretch. Buffalo's hard part of their schedule was effectively early, and they took care of business most weeks. Can Kansas City keep the 1 seed? That will be the question going forward for the Chiefs. Buffalo can win East. Yes, it is possible for the Bills to win the East this weekend. All they need is a Dolphin loss and a Bills win against the Niners. I will talk about both games, as I've mentioned in a moment. And they would win the AFC East because they swept the Dolphins this year. This is a team that is rolling. They're coming off their bye, and they should be relatively ready to go against a Niners team that is kind of sort of on life support if they weren't in the NFC West. And the Bills get healthy. Can they get Keon Coleman back, and can Amari Cooper be a little bit healthier for this stretch run? We'll need to see that. And I think in Buffalo's cases, they're going to desperately need to see that in order to truly finally come out of the AFC in this Josh Allen era. But Detroit will retain the number 1 spot in these power rankings. Streak versus streak. You're probably wondering, wait a minute, what's on the line here? So Detroit's won 9 straight games this season. All right, great. They've done really well. They have basically mowed down a lot of their ops, and they have done so in a whole lot of ways. You want to win with defense? Bet they can do that. You want to win with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, Sonic and Knuckles? Bet they can do that. You want to win with Jared Goff dicing you up? Bet they could do that with Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams and company. Sure, all these things are true. But the other thing that is also true is that the Lions have lost 7 straight games on Thanksgiving. That's not great when you're a team that routinely hosts games on Thanksgiving. Speaking of which, let's get to the games of interest and the first game on Thanksgiving. It is Lions and Bears. Yes, the Bears are in the zombie tier, so we can get here with this game. Caleb Williams played really well last week. It was really good to see that. And now he's going to play on the biggest stage of his pro career, a Thanksgiving window where everybody's going to be watching the noon game on Fox. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to see it. And also, I love the Thanksgiving traditions. John Madden with the coin and the turducken. I love all of this. But I should also mention that. Anyway, when it comes to this game, I am concerned for the Bears defense. Can they possibly keep up with the Lions? Can they possibly keep Detroit at some sort of bay? Because they're going to have to give Caleb Williams any sort of shot to take care of business. Also, can Detroit get some sort of pass rush on Caleb? That'll be big and that'll be important. We're going to need to see either of these things kind of point itself out. And with 2 teams in green that are hoping, and a team in purple, obviously, hoping for the Lions to lose, Detroit's going to have to keep winning to keep that 1 seed on lock. The second Thanksgiving Day game, Giants-Cowboys. It became less interesting with the injury news of Tommy DeVito. I would like to see DeVito play, because at least it'd be some sort of fun. Drew Lock playing, okay, fine. At least he's better than DeVito. Cool. Gives the Giants a better opportunity to win. Even though some of the fans probably don't want them to win because it keeps them away from Shedeur or Cam. Not great there. And for Dallas, they do have their quarterback. Please just draft Alshon Gentry next year and keep it pushing. That's your Heisman winner right now. But we can get into this later. But Alshon Gentry, I think, is your Heisman winner. Anyway, can Dallas keep some sort of momentum going and actually win a home game for the first time in the calendar year of 2024? They still have yet to do that. Every other team in the major 4 sports in this country and Canada have also won a home game. Dallas Cowboys are the last team standing not to do that. We're almost at the end of November. Wild. Let's get into the Monkey's Paws games. Steelers-Bengals. Cincy's your last shot here. Your last stand against your arch op, that's not the Browns really, in the form of the Steelers. Joe Burrow and Chase and Higgins have had an extra week to prepare for the Steelers, who have kind of sort of had a mini bye, to be fair to them. And it's going to be that matchup is what I'm most focused on. The Bengals offense to Steeler defense. Can Cincy protect Burrow from Watt and Preston Smith and company if Alex Highsmith returns and that whole crew that Steelers are going to bring at him? Can Pittsburgh's offense do something, anything, to help its MVP in the form of Chris Boswell? Can they possibly get touchdowns? And can George Pickens not fight people? That's also kind of sort of important. I don't think it's quite legal either. Anyway, crucial game for both teams. In the Steelers' case, keeping the Ravens off their back. In the Bengals' case, making the playoffs, because that seems like it's important to them. The Sunday night game, Niners and Bills. The Niners are in a similar spot as the Bengals, and the Bills are in a kind of sort of similar spot as the Steelers. In the case of the Niners, will Purdy be back? Will Bosa be back? Will Fred Warner be any sort of help, quite honestly, because he's come out today and said he's needed painkillers for the last 3 weeks. Can he be healthy enough and good enough to guide themselves against a Josh Allen-led offense that's been, in most weeks, a freight train? And speaking of the Bills, can Buffalo keep Kansas City's pressure up and make Kansas City have to keep winning and have to keep winning and have to keep winning to keep the 1 seed off their backs? Because if Buffalo keeps winning, all they need is one slip up from the Chiefs, and they instantly gain control of the number 1 seed in the AFC. That is how precarious the situation is for Kansas City. That's how golden of an opportunity Buffalo has to get the 1 seed and make the entire AFC go through Western New York. Let's get to the playoff tier games. Cardinals and Vikings. An intriguing game for two teams that need to make statements and need to prove, I guess, their legitimacy. In the case of the Cardinals, they need to prove that, okay, they took a setback last week in Seattle. They had the resolve to bounce back. And Kyler Murray against a legitimately real defense, that's something I'm looking forward to seeing. I need to see him against a really good defense late in season to kind of get himself back on track. Andrew Van Ginkel's been excellent this year. Can he get home and get to Kyler? He's going to have to stop him. Also, the other way around here with the Vikings offense, I do want to see what they are capable of against a Cardinal defense that can be had and can be cooked, but at times they can make some big plays. That's going to be a fun matchup for me to see what happens in Minneapolis. And then there's Chargers-Falcons. Chargering, falconing. Two very real things. The last time these two teams happened, both teams tried to do these things, and ultimately the Chargers won. Are we going to get a remix of this, if you will? I do want to see what happens there. These are two teams that kind of sort of have to have it to keep their playoff situations afloat. In the Falcons' case, they can keep Tampa Bay off their backs. In the Chargers' case, you got a wild card spot you can maintain and you can keep. And if you're unable to do that, then that could be a little problematic. Let's get to the title tier games now. Dolphins-Packers, a Dolphins team that is trying to become the definition of a come-running squad. And they're starting to get hot at the right time, if you will. They have done really well on offense over the last month since Tua's return. Obviously, the cold weather bugaboo that is Miami's franchise history, not just their McDaniel situation or Tua situation, it's been a franchise level thing. Can Miami win a game that they're not supposed to? They're going to have to in order to make the playoffs, considering the hole that they've been dug into. And then there's the Packers' point of view. Can Green Bay keep it going, and then can they keep pace with the Lions? They're going to have to, and they're going to have to also beat the Vikings and Detroit towards the end of the year to help their situation out. That's a big and that's a vital deal, and that's a vital situation for them. Josh Jacobs against the Dolphin run defense, which spotty at times, but mostly effective. And then there's Tua against the Packer defense. They have not really been able to get home that effectively and that efficiently. Are they able to get enough pressure onto Tua? And if not, can Tua take advantage of it? Something I'm really looking forward to seeing tomorrow night in Lambeau, the one really good Thanksgiving game. And of course, you already know what the main event is. It's the Battle of the Birds. It's the battle of the two teams that won in LA last week. It's Eagles, it's Ravens, it's in Baltimore. It'll be a really good environment. Is this a Super Bowl preview? Potentially, yes. Both these teams are worthy of getting to the Super Bowl. They may have to go through Kansas City or Buffalo in the case of Baltimore. And in the case of the Eagles, they may have to go through Detroit and maybe Green Bay. But yeah, it is very possible that these two teams are the last two standing in New Orleans. And oh, what a time it would be if that were the case. Anyway, you already know the tag matchup. You already know it's Hurts and Barkley versus Henry and Jackson. You already know the matchup with the safeties. If Kyle Hamilton's healthy, he and Reed Blankenship. That's two guys, one who's already a superstar and one who I think is on his way to being there and is not that far off in the form of Blankenship. You know that Baltimore's got weaponry, but the Eagles have a defense that is humming right now. This is a heavyweight matchup with two heavyweights that are going to battle each other in what's going to probably be a really chilly game down in Baltimore. And which of the two struggling kickers, because that's also kind of sort of an important deal in this, which of the two struggling kickers are going to need to make a big kick? I think both might have to, in the form of Justin Tucker and Jake Elliott. Can either make a game-winning kick when they've got to have it? Both conferences will be watching this game very closely. And with that, we have reached the final stop of this train of thoughts. And as I get to the station, I notice there's nobody here. But that's a good thing. Why? Because everybody's playing this week. That's a beautiful thing to see. There are no buys. And this is going to make for a very entertaining week. Obviously, you have 4 games before the Sunday games. And you have these games here with the Eagles-Ravens as the signature piece of this week. You will find the picks, as always, on the Sports Lounge page coming up tomorrow. And with the Thanksgiving Day games, especially Bears and Lions, that will be the first stop of my next train of thought.